Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce to you a gentleman who needs no introduction. What did you say your name was? Mr. Buckley and I have been comrades in arms for the conservative cause for 4 decades. In fact, it has been almost precisely 40 years since we first met at the home of John Clark in East Lansing. John Clark, whose body now lies in an unmarked grave in Cameron, Missouri. And there's been a curious parallel and correspondence in our lives. We both served in the Army during the Second World War. We both were college instructors for some 4 years until we left for more decent occupations. And the first book of each of us was published in 1951. With an interesting coincidence, God and Men at Yale by Mr. Buckley and Randolph of Roanoke by me. And I'm happy to report that both those books still are in print. We both published books exposing the errors of the institutions of higher learning from which we were graduated as Bachelors of Arts. And we both have published books on academic freedom, of which, however, we don't take exactly the same view. Both of us founded magazines in the late 50s. Mr. Buckley's National Review, which has done more to defend the permanent things in American politics and society than any other publication in the history of this country, and my quarterly Modern Age, founded in the same year. We both commenced writing syndicated newspaper columns purely by coincidence in 1962, and Mr. Buckley has continued with that ever since. 30 years. Think of 30 years of that agony. It's terribly exacting, especially having to answer all the letters you get. That's worse than writing the column. And Mr. Buckley, with really heroic determination, has gone on for 3 decades writing a frequent column. I gave up after 13 years. It's too much. Folded it up then. Well, we were both active in the primary and presidential campaigns of Senator Barry Goldwater 2 years later, and still later, of course, in those of Ronald Reagan. We both run for public office in the middle 60s. Mr. Buckley was far more successful with his syndicated column, but I was far more successful in practical politics. I was twice elected and successively to the office I desired, and in each case I got 100% of the vote. You can't do much better than that. Mr. Buckley fought hard, but he got only a little more than 13% of the vote for his office. He was running for mayor of New York, and I was running for Justice of the Peace of Morton Township. Both of us have received presidential medals, and what is more significant, perhaps, both of us have published exactly 30 books each. Isn't that a coincidence? 30 each. And among those books, in his case and in mine, are several romances. So we've written not merely political works and historical works, but fiction as well. Both of us, over 4 decades, have delivered literally thousands of lectures, especially on college campuses. And I'm sure that Mr. Buckley, like myself, has spoken on, well, between 1,500 and 2,000 college campuses. Now, this sounds rather like a wicked conspiracy, of course, but there has been no collusion. We live far apart. We visited each other at our respective homes from time to time, and we correspond sporadically, but we never plan any great campaign to convert the American public to conservative views. What has happened is by coincidence or providence. Arthur Kessler says there's no such thing as coincidence, so it must be by providence that our work has been carried on simultaneously. But we have our disagreements, especially on 2 points. The first of those is television. Mr. Buckley has been a very good influence on television, as had Dr. Kennedy. So I exempt him from my harsh indictment. But I agree with Mr. Buckley's friend and my friend, Malcolm Muggeridge, that television is the ruination of the human race, that we have no hope now. All is over. Mr. Buckley said so at my house once, and I looked like an angel of cheerfulness by his side. But I concluded he's quite right. There is no hope now that television has triumphed, and Mr. Buckley's endeavors and those of Dr. Kennedy will not save us from the ruin which impends. Nevertheless, once upon a time, Mr. Buckley phoned me and asked me to write a television page for every number of National Review. I was horror-struck. What could he think of me? What degradation did he intend for me? I promptly refused. And not long thereafter, I learned that my daughter Monica, who's present here tonight, was surreptitiously watching television in the foretower of our Italianate house. On learning that, I climbed the ladder to the tower, found the set, and defenestrated it, flung it out the window, so it never be used again. Well, now we disagree on that on television. The second disagreement we have is about the situation of National Review. National Review's trouble is it is situated in the center of Manhattan. Now, years ago, when Mr. Buckley was just planning to found National Review, Henry Regnery told him that the worst possible place to publish a conservative magazine would be New York City. And very true that is. What is more, our old friend T.S. Eliot said that the worst form of expatriation for an American writer is residence in New York City. And there is poor Mr. Buckley caught in the heart of Manhattan. Now, I have proposed a remedy for that. Years ago, or decades ago, the English man of letters, Wyndham Lewis, asked me to explain American conservatism. He was blind then. We were talking in his rather gloomy studio apartment in Notting Hill in London. And so I gave him some principles of American conservatism. And he asked, well, give me the name of an American conservative city. I said, oh, Grand Rapids. He said, why Grand Rapids? I said, well, twice during the Roosevelt era, Grand Rapids was the only sizable American city that voted against Franklin Roosevelt. That's true. Twice. The most conservative big town in America. And so I have a remedy for Mr. Buckley's imprisonment there in the heart of Gotham. The thing to do is to shift or translate National Review from the decrepit building which it occupies at 150 East 35th Street to the heart of Grand Rapids. More particularly to the Waters Building. That splendid restored structure, commodious, beautiful, great halls, charming place, which is occupied in part by the Acton Institute. He'll be welcomed there by his friends of the Acton Institute and by all citizens of Grand Rapids. They'll give him a warm welcome when the offices of National Review are entrenched there, and I'm sure a similarly warm welcome tonight as he addresses us on certain reflections on religion. Mr. Buckley.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Kirk, Father Sirico, Ms. Parkinson, Mr. Mitchell. I'm very happy to be in your company and to receive this invitation from Russell Kirk, which I will take very seriously. There is the slight problem, which is the proximity of Minnesota to Michigan. The only reason I say this is because I remember on Election Day in 1984, when the television, those of you who look at it, revealed that Ronald Reagan had received the vote of every state in the Union, with the exception of Minnesota. I sent him a telegram. And I said, perhaps you will be comforted by my recollection that in 1956, Adlai Stevenson had a stunning upset in Minnesota in the primary to Estes Kefauver. Raymond Moley was asked the next day how could he account for this upset, to which he replied, "Did you ever try to tell a joke in Minneapolis?"